Forgotten promises. The aroma of vanilla and cinnamon had long faded from Vanessa's skin by the time she slipped into the midnight blue dress she'd bought 3 months ago. She'd planned to wear it tonight, at the candlelit dinner she'd imagined would celebrate 10 years of marriage. Instead, the reservation she'd made at Bellissimo remained unclaimed, probably given to some happy couple who remembered why they were together, just finishing up a meeting. "Be home late. Don't wait up." James's text glowed on her phone screen, the words as cold as they were familiar. No mention of the date, no acknowledgement of what today meant. She should have expected it. His architectural firm was in the final stages of a major hotel project, but she'd foolishly hoped this milestone might register in his calendar, the way building deadlines did. Vanessa studied her reflection, noting how the dress complemented her chestnut hair and olive skin. At 34, fine lines had begun to appear around her eyes, marking years of both laughter and disappointment. Her pastry shop, Sweet Reverie, had given her purpose when her marriage had slowly stopped doing so. But tonight, even the day's success of securing a major wedding cake commission couldn't fill the hollow space inside her chest. "Enough," she whispered to herself, grabbing her purse. She wouldn't spend their anniversary alone in an empty house, surrounded by framed photos of happier times. The Blue Note was quiet for a Thursday night. A jazz quartet played softly in the corner, the saxophone player's eyes closed as if in prayer. Vanessa chose a small table near the window, where raindrops created abstract patterns against the darkened glass. "Something special?" asked the bartender, a woman with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes. "Just a glass of Cabernet," Vanessa replied, removing her wedding ring and slipping it into her purse. The slight indentation it left behind felt like a metaphor. The wine arrived, deep ruby and promising temporary comfort. As she took her first sip, she noticed a man at the bar counter, camera resting beside his notebook. He wasn't conventionally handsome, but there was something compelling about the thoughtful way he studied the room, as if searching for stories in the shadows. When he looked up and their eyes met, Vanessa quickly glanced away, embarrassed to be caught staring. She focused instead on the band, on the way the pianist's fingers danced across the keys with practiced precision. "Excuse me," a voice said moments later. The photographer stood beside her table, his camera now hanging around his neck. "You're Vanessa Delaney, aren't you? From Sweet Reverie on Maple Street?" Surprised, she nodded. "I am. Have we met?" He smiled, the expression reaching his hazel eyes. "Not formally. I'm Thomas Whitaker. I do photography for the Neighborhood Business Association's quarterly magazine. I took photos of your cinnamon apple galettes last fall." He hesitated. "They were the most photogenic pastries I've ever seen, and the most delicious. I bought 2 after the shoot." Despite herself, Vanessa laughed. "That's quite a compliment. Are you here working tonight?" "Just observing. Thursday nights have the best lighting in here." He gestured to his notebook. "And the best stories? What stories do you see tonight?" she asked, surprising herself with the question. Thomas glanced around. "Hope, regret, anticipation." His eyes returned to hers. Solitude that wasn't planned. The accuracy of his observation stilled her. For a moment, neither spoke. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "That was presumptuous of me." "No," Vanessa replied. "It was perceptive." She hesitated before gesturing to the empty chair across from her. "Would you like to join me? Unless you need to capture more stories." "Some stories are worth putting the camera down for," Thomas said, taking the seat. "Especially when they involve the woman who makes the best dark chocolate espresso tarts in the city." As Thomas settled in, Vanessa felt something unexpected, the lightness of being truly seen, of being recognized not just for her name, but for what she created with her hands and heart. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing away what was while clearing space for what might be. Captured moments. The second glass of wine had softened the edges of Vanessa's disappointment as Thomas described his journey from corporate marketing to freelance photography. His hands moved expressively as he spoke, occasionally adjusting his tortoiseshell glasses. "People think photography is about capturing perfection," he explained. "But it's really about finding beauty in authenticity. Like your pastries, they're exquisite because they're handcrafted, not mass-produced. You remember my work that clearly? Vanessa asked, genuinely surprised. Thomas smiled, reaching for his weathered leather satchel. Actually, he pulled out a small portfolio book and opened it to a marked page. This was part of that small business series. Vanessa gasped softly. The photograph showed her hands dusting flour over rolled dough, early morning light streaming through the bakery windows. She hadn't even noticed him taking this particular shot. Her focus in the image was palpable, her wedding ring catching the light, the same ring now hidden in her purse. You made creating something beautiful look effortless, Thomas said, though I suspect it's anything but. Like most things worth doing, she replied, closing the portfolio gently. Your photographs tell stories, too. The jazz quartet started a new set, the melancholy notes of autumn in New York filling the space between them. Vanessa checked her phone. No messages from James. Anniversary? Thomas asked quietly, noticing her gesture. Vanessa looked up, startled. How did you— The reservation card in your purse, he explained. Bellissimo. 10 years, if I read it correctly. 10 years, she confirmed, her voice barely audible above the music, though it seems I'm the only one who remembered. Thomas didn't offer empty platitudes or judgments. Instead, he asked, What was your wedding like? The unexpected question transported Vanessa back to a sunlit vineyard, to promises that had seemed unbreakable. Simple but perfect. Lavender everywhere. James designed an arbor that framed the mountains perfectly. She smiled at the memory. We danced until my feet were blistered. And your cake? Thomas asked. A professional hazard. I always wonder about the cake. Vanessa laughed genuinely. Lemon with blackberry filling. It was before I opened Sweet Reverie. I would do it differently now. How so? More complexity. Subtle flavors that reveal themselves slowly. She traced the rim of her wine glass. Relationships should be like that too, shouldn't they? Deepening with time, revealing new layers. Thomas nodded thoughtfully. Yet sometimes they become like overexposed photographs, washed out, losing definition. Their conversation flowed effortlessly through the evening, weaving between art, travel, and the small moments that define their lives. Thomas described capturing dawn over the Oregon coastline. Vanessa shared her pilgrimage to French patisseries. Neither mentioned James again, though his absence hovered like negative space in a composition. At 11:30, Vanessa's phone vibrated. James, finally home, wondering where she was. I should go, she said, suddenly aware of how comfortable she'd become in this stranger's company. Thomas nodded, understanding without explanation. Thank you for sharing your evening with me. As they walked outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under streetlights. Without thinking, Vanessa said, The light right now, would you photograph this? Thomas smiled, lifting his camera. May I? He didn't photograph the street as she expected, but instead framed her against the illuminated windows of the Blue Note, capturing her silhouette against the warm light behind. The shutter clicked once, twice. Sorry, he said, lowering the camera. Professional reflex. No, it's fine, Vanessa said, oddly moved by his instinct to preserve this moment. Will it turn out? Some images reveal themselves only in development, Thomas replied. He hesitated before adding, My studio gallery is having an opening next Friday. Local artists, local subjects. Your bakery is actually featured in the Neighborhood series. He handed her a simple business card. Thomas Whitaker Photography. An address in the Arts District. You should come, he said. See how others see your work. Vanessa tucked the card into her purse alongside her wedding ring. I'll think about it. As she drove home, she realized she hadn't felt this seen, truly seen, in years. Not as someone's wife or someone's disappointment, but as Vanessa, creator, observer, human. James was waiting in the living room when she arrived, his tie loosened, dark circles under his eyes. Where were you? I was worried. Vanessa studied her husband's face, the face she'd once memorized, now sometimes felt like a stranger's. Out, she said simply. Just needed some air. She didn't mention the anniversary. Neither did he. As she climbed the stairs to their bedroom, she wondered when exactly they had become so skilled at not seeing what was right before them. Reflective surfaces. 3 days after the forgotten anniversary, Vanessa found a massive bouquet of roses on her desk at Sweet Reverie. The card read simply, "I'm an idiot. Forgive me? Dinner tonight at Bellissimo. I'm Babe J." Her assistant Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Someone's trying hard to get out of the doghouse." Vanessa touched a velvety petal. "Better late than never, I suppose." But the words felt hollow, rehearsed, like a line from a play she'd performed too many times. She'd already grieved something, though she wasn't sure exactly what. Not just the anniversary, but perhaps the expectation that dates still mattered, that she still mattered in the architecture of James's life. Throughout the day, as she piped rosettes onto wedding cupcakes, Vanessa found herself thinking of Thomas's photographs, how they found significance in ordinary moments. Her hands moving through familiar motions, light catching on stainless steel, the perfect imperfection of handmade things. She hadn't intended to call the number on his business card, but during her afternoon break, sitting alone in her office with flour dusting her apron, she did. "Thomas Whitaker Photography," he answered on the third ring. "It's Vanessa, from the other night." She paused, suddenly uncertain why she'd called. "Vanessa," he repeated, warmth in his voice. "I was just developing those shots from Thursday. That's actually why I'm calling. The photographs you took of me, they turned out beautifully," he said. "There's one in particular that captured something luminous." She twisted the phone cord around her finger. "Could I see them? Before your gallery opening?" A pause. "Of course. I'm in the darkroom most of today, but tomorrow afternoon works." "Tomorrow, then," she agreed, ignoring the voice inside, asking what exactly she was doing. That evening, wearing the midnight blue dress again, Vanessa met James at Bellissimo. He looked handsome in his charcoal suit, though tired around the eyes. He stood when she approached, kissing her cheek with uncharacteristic tenderness. "You look beautiful," he said, his eyes genuinely appreciative. "I'm so sorry about last week. The Westwood project is consuming everything." "Including us?" The question escaped before she could filter it. James reached for her hand across the white tablecloth. "I know I've been absent, physically and otherwise. But after this project wraps up next month, there will be another project," Vanessa finished. "There always is," discomfort flickered across his face. "That's not fair. My work supports our life together, does it?" She looked around the elegant restaurant. "Or does it just support the absence of one?" The sommelier arrived with the wine James had pre-ordered, an expensive vintage from the year they were married. A thoughtful touch that would have meant everything a week ago. Now it felt like an artifact from a museum of their relationship. Later, over dessert, not as good as hers, they both acknowledged, James asked, "Where did you go?" "That night?" Vanessa hesitated. "A jazz bar." "The Blue Note. Alone?" "Initially." She met his eyes. "I met someone there. A photographer. He's featured my bakery in his work." Something shifted in James's expression. Not quite jealousy, but awareness. "I see." "He noticed things," Vanessa continued. "About my work. About me." "And I haven't been," James concluded, his voice quiet. The check came. James paid. They drove home separately, as Vanessa had come from the bakery. In their driveway, he reached for her hand again. "Can we fix this?" he asked, vulnerability naked in his voice. Vanessa looked at their home, the modernist design James had created in their early years together, when their dreams had aligned. "I don't know if it's about fixing," she said finally. "Maybe it's about seeing clearly what's actually here now." She slept in the guest room that night, claiming a headache. But really, she needed space to think, to feel without the warmth of James's body confusing matters. On her nightstand, Thomas's business card caught the moonlight through the window. Tomorrow, she would see the photographs, see herself through someone else's eyes, and maybe, just maybe, begin to understand what had been developing in the darkroom of her heart all along. Developing Clarity Thomas's studio occupied the renovated upper floor of a pre-war building in the Arts District. Large windows flooded the space with northern light, illuminating walls lined with photographs, cityscapes, portraits, intimate moments of urban life. "Welcome to my world," Thomas said, ushering Vanessa inside. He wore a simple black Henley and jeans, his camera absent for once. "Can I get you tea? Coffee?" "Tea would be nice," Vanessa replied, drawn to a series of black and white images near the window. They depicted hands engaged in various crafts: a potter shaping clay, a tailor guiding fabric through a machine, a violinist's fingers pressed against strings. "My Makers series," Thomas explained, returning with 2 steaming mugs. "I'm fascinated by the relationship between hands and creation." Vanessa accepted the tea, breathing in its fragrant steam. "Including my hands making pastry." "Exactly." He led her to a small light table where several photographs lay carefully arranged. "These are from Thursday night." Vanessa's breath caught as she studied the images. In one, she stood silhouetted against the Blue Note's windows, her profile illuminated by golden light, her expression contemplative but somehow peaceful. In another, she was laughing across the table, a moment she didn't even remember Thomas capturing. "You weren't actually taking notes that night, were you?" she asked, understanding dawning. Thomas smiled sheepishly. "I was, just not only with words. Some moments begged to be preserved." He hesitated. "I should have asked permission for these candids." "They're beautiful," Vanessa admitted. "Though strange to see myself when I didn't know I was being seen." "That's when people are most authentic," Thomas said. "When they're not performing for the camera." He selected one particular image, Vanessa looking out the rain-streaked window, the soft focus rendering her both present and somehow distant. "This one especially. There's a story here. A woman forgetting and remembering herself simultaneously," Vanessa murmured. Their fingers brushed as they both reached for the photograph, and Vanessa pulled back slightly, suddenly aware of boundaries being approached. Thomas noticed and respectfully created space between them. "Your husband," he said carefully. "Did he eventually remember?" Vanessa set her mug down. 3 days later. "We had a make-up dinner last night at Bellissimo." Thomas nodded, expression unreadable. "I'm glad. Are you?" "Yes," he said simply. "Despite what you might think, I'm not looking to complicate your life, Vanessa." She studied him, this man who noticed details, who found art in ordinary moments. "Then why invite me here? Why show me these photographs?" "Because sometimes we need to see ourselves through fresh eyes." He gathered the photographs carefully. "To remember who we are apart from how others see us, or don't see us." The truth of his words resonated uncomfortably. "James is trying," she said, though she wasn't sure why she felt the need to defend her marriage to this near stranger. "I believe you," Thomas replied. "And I hope it helps." He handed her a small envelope. "This one's yours, whether you come to the gallery opening or not." Inside was the silhouette photograph, beautifully matted, Vanessa running her finger along its edge. "Thank you." "For what it's worth," Thomas added quietly, "I think great relationships are like great photographs. They require attention to detail, patience, and sometimes difficult truths about light and shadow." Vanessa slipped the photograph back into its envelope. "And what if the image has changed too much from the original negative?" "Then you have choices," Thomas said. "Preserve it as a memory of what was, or create something new that honors the truth of what is." They parted with an awkward handshake that seemed insufficient for the intimacy of their conversations, yet appropriate for their uncertain connection. As Vanessa drove to her bakery, the photograph on the passenger seat beside her, she realized she was approaching a crossroads she'd been avoiding for longer than she cared to admit. That evening, when James called to say he'd be working late again, Vanessa didn't feel the usual resentment. Instead, she felt clarity beginning to crystallize like sugar syrup cooling into structure. She spread old photographs across their dining table, wedding pictures, vacation snapshots, candid moments from their first years together, then placed Thomas's photograph beside them. The woman in the older images smiled differently, expected differently, perhaps loved differently too. When James finally came home near midnight, he found Vanessa sitting among the scattered photographs, waiting for a conversation that would finally develop their future, whatever it might be, into sharp focus. "Exposed hearts. What's all this?" James asked, setting down his briefcase. His eyes moved across the photographs scattered on the dining table, lingering on the artistic black and white image that didn't belong with their personal collection. "Our life," Vanessa replied. "Or at least the documented version of it." James loosened his tie and sat across from her, fatigue etched into his features. "Looks like you've been busy with memory lane." "Not memories so much as evidence," Vanessa said, sliding a photograph toward him. Their honeymoon in Santorini, both sun-kissed and laughing. "Remember how we used to talk for hours? About everything and nothing?" James picked up the photograph, his expression softening. "We stayed up all night on that terrace, planning the home we'd build together." "And you did build it," Vanessa acknowledged, gesturing around them. "Exactly as we dreamed. We built it," James corrected. Vanessa shook her head. "No, James, you built the house. But somewhere along the way, we stopped building us." She selected another photograph, their 5th anniversary. James's attention already visibly divided, his eyes checking his watch even as they posed. "When did your work become more compelling than our story?" James ran a hand through his graying hair. "That's not fair. My work is for us, for our future." "What future are we saving for?" Vanessa asked quietly. "The one where we finally have time for each other? When does that arrive exactly?" Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truths. "Who took this?" James finally asked, picking up Thomas's photograph of Vanessa at the Blue Note. "The photographer I mentioned, Thomas." James studied the image, his architect's eye noting the composition, the play of light and shadow, the haunting quality of his wife's expression. "He sees you," he said, the words more observation than accusation. "Yes," Vanessa wouldn't lie, not now when truth was finally developing between them. "And I haven't been," James said, setting down the photograph carefully. "Not really." "Neither have I," Vanessa admitted. "I've been so focused on what you weren't giving me, I stopped seeing what I wasn't giving us. Stopped communicating what I needed. Just expected you to somehow know." James reached across the table, his fingers finding hers. "Are you leaving me for him?" "No," Vanessa said firmly. "This isn't about Thomas. He just happened to be the mirror that showed me what was already changing." She squeezed James's hand. "This is about us, and whether we still know how to see each other. Whether we want to." Rain began to patter against the windows, echoing the night at the Blue Note. James stood, walking to the large picture window he'd designed to frame their backyard. The garden Vanessa had once tended carefully, but had recently neglected. "I miss us," he said simply, his back to her. "The real us, not just two people maintaining a house and separate careers." Vanessa joined him at the window, their reflections ghost-like against the darkened glass. "I miss us too." "Is it too late?" James turned to her, vulnerability naked in his expression. Vanessa considered the question honestly. The easy answer would be assurance, comfort, but true intimacy required truth. "I don't know, but I think it's worth finding out." James nodded slowly. "How do we start?" "By seeing clearly. All of it, the beautiful and the broken." Vanessa touched his face gently. "I need you to really see me, James. Not just the wife who's always been there, but the woman who's changing, who has dreams beyond our safe routine." "And I need you to see that I'm scared," James admitted, the words seemingly surprising even him. "Terrified that I've built this whole life, this career, and somehow lost the very thing it was meant to protect." They stood together in the half-light, two people finding their way back to recognition. Not with grand gestures or promises, but with the simple courage of being fully visible to each other again. 2 weeks later, Vanessa attended Thomas's gallery opening. James came with her, his hand steady at the small of her back. They stood together before the Makers series, including the photograph of Vanessa's flour-dusted hands creating pastry. Thomas approached them, professional and warm. No hidden currents, no unspoken possibilities. Just appreciation for the moment, for the art of seeing truly. "Your work is extraordinary," James told him, genuine admiration in his voice. "You've captured something essential about creation." "That's the highest compliment," Thomas replied, "especially from someone who creates such remarkable structures." Later, as they walked to their car, Vanessa slipped her hand into James's. "Thank you for coming tonight." "Thank you for inviting me into this part of your world," he replied. Then, with a small smile, "I've reduced my involvement in the Westwood project, delegated more to the associates." Vanessa looked up, surprised. "Really? But it's your flagship design." "Some designs matter more than others," James said simply. "I'm focusing on the blueprint that counts most." They drove home through rain-slick streets, the city lights refracting through droplets on the windshield. Their conversation flowed more easily than it had in years, about dreams deferred, boundaries needed, changes desired. At a stoplight, James turned to her. "Are we going to be okay?" Vanessa considered the question, the honest uncertainty in his eyes. Not all damaged photographs could be restored. Some relationships, like overexposed negatives, couldn't recapture what was lost. But others found new depth in their imperfections, in the courage to see clearly, to hold space for both shadow and light. To recognize that love was not a single exposure but a long development process, requiring patience, attention, and care. "I think," Vanessa said finally, "we're learning to see each other again. And that's where everything real begins." As they continued home, Vanessa thought of Thomas's words about photographs requiring attention to detail, patience, and sometimes difficult truths about light and shadow. Perhaps marriages required the same, not the airbrushed perfection of anniversary cards, but the genuine recognition that comes from truly being seen, with all one's flaws and possibilities, by someone who chooses to look deeply, day after day, year after year, not because they once promised to, but because they still want to.